It's up to you.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to our very famous, perennially famous Thunderdome event. I know some of you have been to other Thunderdomes. You know what to expect. For those of you who are new to this event, let me just explain a few ground rules, right? We'll have 5 presentations, 4 in person. 1 is a recorded video, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. My name is Professor Maxim Matusevich. I know some of you know me. Some of you are in my freshman seminar. It's good to see you guys. And I'm not presenting, but I'll be sort of in charge of the proceedings here today. So each person gets 5 minutes. And it's not 4. No, it could be 4. But it's not 6. It's not 6. And Christian here will have a buzzer. When the buzzer goes off, no matter at what point the presentation is by the faculty has to stop, right? It cannot continue. Each person gets 5 minutes. Once we're finished with the presentations, we'll leave the room. And Christian, once again, has volunteered on my prompt to do the voting, to supervise the voting. You know, you'll have to put down one name, one presenter that you vote for. And then we'll see who wins the prize, who wins the trophy. Professor Sean Harvey, who is going first, he is our reigning champion. So a lot is at stake for him. As you can imagine, you know, he really wants to defend his title, and others want to capture it. So the whole thing is going to be nerve-wracking. So before we start, let me just say a couple of things about the department. As I mentioned before, we're super modest. We're just home of excellence, that's all. As you know, it's a popular department on campus. We offer a lot of courses. And the purpose of the Thunderdomes is to present to students a slate of courses that we're offering next semester, because registration starts soon, and we're giving you options to choose from. Each person makes a pitch for their course, and you vote on the one that you like best. Here is something that's actually remote memory at this point. This is the glory moment for Professor Sean Harvey that I'm sure he would like to recapture now. You know, he won our previous Thunderdome back in April, and as I mentioned before, he is our reigning champion. Just a few quick words about why we are doing this and why we're encouraging students to take major in history, because you do get a lot of options. Having history major doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a history professor, even though I think, as each one of us can attest to, it's a wonderful career path. It's long. It's not easy. But if it happens, it's wonderful. But there are other options. And you can see here that our graduates, you know, a lot of them go into legal profession, for example. Here you can see that 11% of history majors nationally end up becoming lawyers. I think for our university, it's a much higher percentage. You know, according to the numbers I've seen, it's more than 50% of our history majors actually go into law. A lot of them go into education. I know some of you double majoring in education. We have people going into business. We have people going into government work. We have people working for auction houses, believe it or not, right? So there are a lot of options open to you. Not everyone of our colleagues was able to be here to present their courses or to sort of pitch, even if informally. And some of them asked me to mention those courses for you. Professor Kirsten Schultz will be teaching a course on Brazil. She's not here today, but she really wanted students to know that the course will be offered on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3:30 to 4:45 p.m. Professor Schultz is a historian of Brazil. Last year, her book on Brazil won the award of the best book on the history of Brazil, right? Help me with what's the title of the award, you know, by the Brazilian Studies Association or Brazilian History Association. She's a very prominent historian of Lusophone history, and she'll be teaching this course. Professor Larry Green, that I'm sure some of you met before, he'll be teaching courses, as he always does, on American history, and he'll be offering a course on Civil War and Reconstruction, very provocative course, also a course that has some modern-day ramifications that are very difficult to ignore, as you could see here Enroll and learn. That's the message coming straight from Professor Larry Green. And last but not least, and obviously there are other courses we're offering, but that's the one we really wanted students to be aware of for the first time, as far as I can tell, at least in my memory. We'll be offering a course in public history practicum by Dr. Thomas Zhaznik. And this is a course that will introduce students to kind of foundations of museum professions, but also give you hands-on experience working on a particular exhibit on Catholics, Revolutionary Catholics in Philadelphia. And the outcome of the course would be a student's participation in creating this particular exhibit. So this is going to be exciting. This is going to be very practical. And this is something new, something we've never done before or not in a long time. So I strongly encourage you to give very serious consideration to this opportunity. Now, our defending champ, Professor Sean Harvey, whose area of specialization, as you can see here, colonial America, US between the American Revolution and Civil War, Native American history, and intellectual history. In the spring, Dr. Harvey will be teaching Introduction to American History 2, the course that he'll introduce now, the history of deportation, deportation in American history, and also colloquium in American history, which will focus specifically on the interpretations of the American Revolution, just in time for the 250th anniversary of the event, which sort of produced the country we all live in, share, for better or for worse. So, without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to Professor Harvey.
All right. Thank you very much. Who's timekeeping?
So.
Okay. Are you ready? Yeah. All right. Oh, nope, wrong way. Oh, you handed it to me upside down. Sorry. Please start now. Now. All right. Images of deportation have been inescapable in the last several months. We've seen unmarked, sometimes masked, law enforcement officers swarming neighborhoods using military technology, raiding homes and businesses, arresting people, sending them off to other countries, not necessarily their country of origin. The targets have been primarily immigrants who have allegedly committed crimes, who have entered the country illegally, who have overstayed their visas, who have expressed opinions that the current president doesn't really like. Among the justifications is the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, the only one of the notorious Alien and Sedition Acts still on the books. It was the product of a previous moment of anti-immigrant national security concern. Clearly, the president or his advisors are mindful of US history when they're looking for precedents. Of course, according to reports, not only so-called aliens have been targets for deportation. US citizens have also been deported. This moment is extraordinary. This moment is not unique. Over many periods of American history, both immigrants and non-immigrants have been targeted for deportation, banishment, or other forms of expulsion. In the 1950s, the federal government launched what was called Operation Wetback, said to have deported 1 million Mexicans and Mexican Americans. A few decades earlier, during World War I, in the first Red Scare that immediately followed, the federal government deported hundreds of labor leaders, anarchists, socialists, communists. Associating immigration with foreign radicalism was an important part of the establishment of a national origins quota system. A few decades before that, following the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, Americans across the United States rioted, violently expelling Chinese and Chinese Americans from their communities. A few decades before that, a new, rapidly growing, predominantly white religion, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commonly called Mormons, faced violent persecution and a call from the Missouri governor, among others, for expulsion or extermination. That kind of rhetoric was usually reserved for indigenous people. They had been subject to what we call removal since the 17th century, In the 1830s, under Andrew Jackson, the federal government launched the first federally coordinated, bureaucratically administered program of ethnic cleansing, removal. Killed thousands, mainly through callous negligence, but it was also enforced in some cases through war. In some cases, Seminoles, for example. Between the American Revolution and the Civil War, almost every program for gradual emancipation was accompanied with calls for the colonization of free black people, shipping them off to Liberia or Haiti or some other destination. Even before there was an independent United States, colonial Americans were the driving force behind the brutal expulsion of French Acadians from what the British called Nova Scotia. These are the kinds of stories we're going to be examining in Deportation in American History. We're going to be looking at deportation, banishment, other forms of expulsion, both as government-administered programs and as kind of ad hoc local practices of expulsion. We're going to be looking at motives, economic motives, racial and religious prejudices, and national security concerns, among others. But most importantly, we're also going to be looking at ways ordinary people resisted. Evasion, community organizing, legal challenges, in some cases, force, to claim a place in the United States as their own. I'm really excited about this course. It's a new class. It'll fulfill the upper level US history requirement, and I really hope to see you there.
I think this goes to William James. Okay. Oh, no, Nathaniel. Yeah. Okay. We're very technologically advanced, as you can see, right? So I'm happy to give the floor to former chair of the history department, presently director of the Russian East European Studies Center, program, not center yet, Professor Nathaniel Knight. Professor Knight is an expert on Russian imperial history, history of anthropology, history of science, Russian literature and folklore. In the spring of 2026, he'll be teaching a number of courses, a couple of sections of History 1202, which is Western Civilization 2, and the course that he will present to your consideration now, Kievan Rus and Muscovy. So without any further ado, I'm giving the floor to Professor Knight.
Okay, thank you. So which one do I press? This one? All right. So, ready to go. Okay, 1, 2. All right. So let's talk about Russia. What can we say about Russia? Well, first thing is that it is huge. At its height, 1/6 of the Earth's landmass, stretching all the way from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean. Why is it even there? How do you put a country like that together? Even more important, how do you keep it from falling apart? That's a lot of what we'll be talking about in Kievan Rus and Muscovy. And a big part of the story is this thing called autocracy. Right? Vesting absolute individual power and sovereignty in a single ruler, a single person. Autocracy has its advantages. You can get a lot done as an autocrat, but it has downsides as well, for sure. Now, the medieval principality of Rus, which we'll talk a great deal about in the beginning of the course, was not an autocracy. But the rulers of the city of Muscovy, which started to rise to prominence in the wake of the Mongol invasions of the 13th century, they worked very hard to establish and institute autocratic rule. And by around 1500, they had pretty much gotten it done. And that has a lot to do with the rise of Muscovy from a minor principality to the dominant power in Western Eurasia. Now, no Tsar better exemplifies the perils and possibility of autocracy than this guy here, Ivan IV, aka Ivan the Terrible. He was terrible, and he ruled for a long, long time. He started it in 1533 as a little baby, 3 years old, and went all the way until 1584. You know, he started out not so badly. He took personal power in 1547 after a pretty traumatic childhood, to be admitted. He was guided by a close inner circle of advisors, people he trusted who were capable. He reformed local administration. He wrote a law code. He won battles. He expanded the kingdom. Oh, well, not so bad, really. You know, with autocratic power, you can get a lot done. But somehow around 1560, he kind of goes off the rails. Some say he went mad with grief after the death of his beloved wife, Anastasia Romanova. Remember that name. Others say it was the treachery of close associates that threw him into a downward spiral of paranoia. Others say he suffered from mercury poisoning due to therapy he underwent to ease chronic pain from his deformed spine. One way or another, things got really weird. First, he launches a fruitless, destructive war against Lithuania, his western neighbor. Then in 1563, just out of the blue, he announced he was retiring. He packed up all his stuff, left the Kremlin, and that was it. He carved out a big chunk of territory that he would rule as his personal domain and left the rest to his boyars, the nobles. He called this the Oprichnina, and recruited a large army of brutal henchmen to help him enforce the new orders. These henchmen, known as the oprichniki, had full impunity to run roughshod over the entire population. It was said that they rode around on huge black horses, wearing black capes with severed dog heads and brooms hanging by their sides. From time to time, Ivan would gather his henchmen and they would engage in orgies of violence and debauchery. One of the most notorious, in 1567, he had Red Square arranged as a veritable theme park of torture and suffering. At the center of it all was a huge iron coffin in which he boiled to death his foreign minister. So much for diplomacy. When he wasn't torturing people to death, he was praying at monasteries. In addition to being a bloodthirsty madman, he was also a fanatically devoted Orthodox Christian. How do you explain that? We'll talk about it. All of this had a devastating effect on the population of the country. Entire regions were depopulated by the end of his reign. Most importantly for Ivan, the chaos began to impact his ability to wage wars. His army started losing badly. And in 1572, after a particularly disastrous loss, Ivan is forced to call off the Oprichnina. But he wasn't done yet. A few years before he died, he killed his eldest son in a fit of violent rage. Not a good move for a hereditary monarch. End result, eventually the ruling dynasty died out and all hell broke loose. Russia was thrown into a kaleidoscope of violent civic strife and chaos. When things finally calmed down in 1612, the only solution the elites could come up with, bring back autocracy. A hapless young nephew of Ivan's first wife was brought in as the new Tsar. His name was Michael Romanov. Sound familiar? Autocracy locks Russia into a vicious cycle. Concentration of power allows for rapid mobilization of resources. Power makes it possible to maintain control with a remarkably thin presence on the ground. Autocracy brings internal cohesion, external strength, but all of this at the expense of individual. Despotism is the price that Russia pays for greatness. So, thank you.
10 seconds. Thank you so much, Dr. Knight. I think Dr. Hoff is getting wired. Dr. William James Hoffer is our expert on U.S. legal history and U.S. economic history. He also teaches, as you will see, a course on global warfare. In the spring, he'll be offering courses in American history 1 and 2, and the course on global world history of warfare, which he will introduce in a second once he gets all set up. This is so cool. Dr. Hoffer?
Whatever. Can I use the keyboard? Will it work? Okay. So, Hopefully you can read that. I know I can't. I don't wear my glasses. Now, that being said, a quote from Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, February 12th, 2002. I'm not going to be one of those professors who reads the slide to you. My particular favorite is the unknown unknowns. When preparing for war, what are the unknown unknowns? And of course, the answer is, we don't know. We have to ask ourselves the big questions, which is what I intend to ask in this course, the World History of Warfare. Who are we? How did we get here? Why are we? Confused yet? Excellent. I'm doing my job. Let me try and be more specific, and yet more confusing. Here's a painting. Look at the central figure. Does he look familiar? He should. It's the mustache man. He was in charge of the Nazis. You may have heard of them. The question is, what year is the painting? The answer is 1889, the year of the mustache man's birth. The painting was before he modeled himself in that fashion. And it is the Wild Hunt. Wotan, the equivalent of Odin, I don't know, Anthony Hopkins, I guess, if you're a fan of the MCU. And it is a depiction of the coming Armageddon. Remember, he begins his career as an artist, an unsuccessful artist. Oops, oh well. What does this mean? It means that culture and history, and in particular warfare, are intertwined. It's not just about technology. It's not just about capitalism or something like that. It's actually a complex interaction among society, necessity, aggression, humanity. Let us ponder this over the scope of human history. Here's an interpretation of the universe. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. A phrase popularized by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and then later by, some would regard even more important, Barack Obama. Just kidding. Maybe not. Hard to tell. Anyway, point is taken from an abolitionist minister in the 1850s. Or if you prefer, we're going to need a longer arc of history because, quite frankly, at times, like the present, and possibly the 1960s, if you were interested in Vietnam, for example, we're going to need a longer arc. I don't know if you know this film. It is arguably one of the greatest films in cinema history. It's called Jaws. And that shark has just eaten the back half of the boat. So we're going to need a longer arc, just like we're going to need a longer boat. Now, what will you learn in this class? And the answer is, according to the creator of Mary Poppins, among others, for me there are no answers, only questions, and I am grateful that the questions go on and on. I don't look for an answer because I don't think there is one. I'm very glad to be the bearer of a question. In other words, I have no idea what you'll learn. But I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And then you're going to ask me a lot of questions. And we'll try and figure out the answers. That is the secret of this course and the secret of history. Now, in case you are wondering if war is important, here is a quotation from a famous figure that actually wasn't uttered by that famous figure, but was uttered by someone else, but it doesn't matter because we now all know it. You may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. 1941. What was going on in 1941 in the United States? Oh yeah, nothing. Just a lot of stuff. But there was some other stuff too, wasn't there? And it's all this big, intersectional, interesting little question that's all interconnected that has no answer. And now, after thoroughly depressing you and no doubt rendering some concerns about humanity's future, let me present to you the journey ahead. Where is it leading? I don't know. But it looks kind of nice, doesn't it? Nice little fall theme there. And my wish for you, go in peace as we study war. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Hoffa. Go in peace, but not yet. We have more presentations coming up. Professor Mark Milewski is our historian of modern European intellectual history, also an expert on European cultural and political history. In the spring, Professor Milewski will be teaching courses, as you can see listed here, Western Civilization 1. He'll be teaching senior seminar, and the course that he'll be presenting here in a few seconds, History 3242, French Revolution and Napoleon. I'm giving the floor to Professor Milewski.
Let me know. Start. My course, The French Revolution and Napoleon, concerns arguably the most consequential and dramatic 25 years in world history. Hopefully, my mini lecture, A Tale of Two Paintings, will provide you with a sense of both the period and the course. In the sweltering summer of 1793 in Normandy, France, Charlotte Corday had had enough. The comely 23-year-old daughter of a minor aristocratic family had been a fervent supporter of the French Revolution since its beginnings 4 years before. But in the last 6 years, the revolution had, in her view, become dangerously radicalized. The Jacobin political faction had seized control of the country, prosecuting and executing the king, and in its zeal to carry out its revolutionary agenda, had begun imprisoning and guillotining its political enemies, which included the Girondins, the more moderate faction favored by Mademoiselle Corday. And so, drunk on the ancient author Plutarch and his Republican Roman heroes, Corday concocted a plan to put a stop to the butchery. On July 9th, she jumped into a coach bound for Paris, eventually making her way to the Palais Royal, the 18th century equivalent of a shopping mall, where she, the provincial, bought a fashionable black hat with green ribbons and a 6-inch knife. Her plan was to assassinate this man, Jean-Paul Marat, the former quack scientist turned Jacobin journalist, who Corday blamed for causing much of the bloodshed that she so abhorred. "I will kill one man to save 100,000, she said. Making a beeline for Marat's house, she was told that the journalist was indisposed due to a debilitating skin condition. But later that evening, she returned and was let in under the pretext that she had a list of traitors from her hometown that she wished to deliver to him personally. She found Marat in his bathtub, where he spent much of his time trying to find relief from his horrible affliction. Taking a chair next to him, she chatted for about half an hour before pulling out her knife and driving it ferociously and fatally below Marat's clavicle and into his aorta. As Marat cried out and friends and neighbors rushed into the room, Corday made no attempt to flee. She was proud of her handiwork, as well as her transformation into a female political assassin. Now, there are many depictions of the dying Marat, but none remotely as famous as the one painted by Jacques-Louis David and officially commissioned by the revolutionary government. David's Death of Marat, seen here, is one of the great masterpieces of Western art, as well as one of the towering achievements of political propaganda. For David had somehow managed to turn this singularly ugly, odious man, the dog leech of the revolution, as the historian Thomas Carlyle called him, into a Christ-like martyr for the Jacobin cause. Several days after the assassination, Corday was tried, found guilty, and sentenced to death. When asked if she had a final request, she replied, I want my portrait painted. That painting, seen here, took only 2 hours to complete and was finished just before the executioner entered her cell to escort her to the guillotine. Her last act was to cut off a lock of her hair and hand it to the artist, seen there on the right, Jean-Jacques Hauer, as a souvenir of a poor, dying woman. As her tumbril clattered through the Parisian streets in a driving summer rain, one spectator recalled, her beautiful face was so calm that one would have said she was a statue. Behind her, young girls held each other's hands as they danced. For 8 days, I was in love with Charlotte Corday. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Molesky. It's emotional. Last but certainly not least, we have a different format for this last presentation. Dr. Sarah Fieldston couldn't be here today, but she prepared a short film for you, and she wanted me to make sure that you know she is the author of the film, along with her 8-year-old son, whose name is Henry. So, I think we have to acknowledge his contributions as well. Dr. Fieldston is our expert on post-World War II United States. She's written a lot and taught courses on the history of childhood, US and the Cold War, and history of travel. In the spring, she'll be in charge of our internship. So, by the way, if anyone is interested, she's the point person for that. She'll be teaching our Introduction to Historical Research, American History 1, one section, and the course that we'll present here today, History 3377, the United States since 1980. Okay, let me dim the lights. Our feature presentation. Okay. So these are the courses we're presenting to your attention, and I know a couple of you came in late, so let me explain what's going to happen over the next 4 or 5 minutes. Christian has kindly agreed to supervise the election, so I'll ask faculty members, they already know the drill, to leave the room. And, and you vote, right? So you put down just one name here and wait until I leave the room. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. And then I'll ask Christian to collect those. You don't mind, right? And count the votes. And then once the votes have been counted, just let me know. We're going to be right outside the room. And we'll come back and we'll declare our winner. And you can imagine this is a very emotional moment for all of us, right? Okay. And don't forget about the cookies and the apples, please. Can I vote? Sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll be outside the room. Let me It'll take 2 minutes. Cookies, apples.
What Nevada said during 2020.
Okay. Hanging chads, right? All right. Okay. Hoffer. Harvey. Knight. Knight. That's Hoffer. Harvey. Molesky. Harvey. Knight. Knight. Harvey. Knight.
That's what now I know how pollsters feel like.
This is, wow. Molesky. Okay. Filston. 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 Harvey. Wow, this is very close. This is going to be 2000 election all over again. Molesky. Okay. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
This is
10. So, Dr. Knight.
okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to bring everyone in. And, oh, do you mind taking a picture on my newly acquired iPhone 17? Okay. Like, literally, yeah. No, it's insured. Okay, do you mind coming in? Everyone can see you. Okay, here comes a very emotional moment, which happens twice a year. And, you know, I have to say, the tally was very close. You know, I think it's one of the closest I've ever seen. Nevertheless, Dr. Knight is the winner. Not on?
Well done.
But it was very close. It was very close. You can see the pile. Well, you can't see it, but it was very close. Okay. In the meantime, we have flyers for, you know, listing the history courses in the spring, and I'm going to pass around another handout for the public history practicum. If you could just pass around. And one more thing, I was asked to make an announcement. In 45 minutes, 5:30 p.m., in the event lounge, University Center, another event has been scheduled, which at least some of you, I think, may be interested in, Caribbean Archives and Digital Pedagogies, the Puerto Rico syllabus, Bad Bunny, and VX. I'm sure I mispronounced, right? Bad Bunny, I know who he is, actually, believe it or not. You know, I literally learned 2 weeks ago and spent like 30 minutes doom scrolling, you know, trying to figure out who is that Bad Bunny. I know who he is. I know who he is. Okay, if anyone is interested, here is more information on this event. And again, thank you so much for coming here. Thank you to the presenters. It's been really emotional. And please, please have those cookies and apples, especially apples. They're good for you. Okay. All right.